We've been debating the issue of illegal immigration for years now. President Trump now wants to cut down on legal immigration. It is controversial because, as Jacqueline Matter tells us, under the president's plan, a lot of our parents and grandparents would have been excluded from coming into the country.
President Trump unveiling a much-awaited plan on the nation's immigration system earlier this month by placing people with certain skills at the front of the line while pushing others to the back.
This is a move in the right direction. It's fundamentally changing our immigration process, our legal immigration process, which is badly needed.
I think something has to be done to balance out, to help the economy.
I think it weakens us more than it strengthens us.
In an effort to cut legal immigration in half by 2027, President Donald Trump's new proposal would mean a massive reduction in legal immigration and cut a policy that aims to keep families together. The proposal will limit who could be sponsored for immigration to immediate family members. It would end the diversity visa lottery program, and it would cap permanent resident status for refugees to $50,000 a year. For Sarasota Republican State Committeeman Christian Ziegler, he thinks this new plan is just what America needs.
For years, I've been saying that we need to move to a merit-based immigration system. Everything he's put in his proposal makes a lot of sense. I think this is a great first step. It's really common sense. And so I encourage him to let's pass this.
Opponents were sharply critical of the proposal, however, saying it would cut jobs and hurt our economy.
Reduce the number of lower skilled workers that are coming to the country that certain types of industries rely upon.
Called the Reforming American Immigration for Strong Employment Act, or RAISE Act, the bill would only allow spouses and minor children to apply for green card status and focus on a merit-based application to limit the immigrant pool. It favors people between the ages of 26 and 30 with a doctorate, high English proficiency, and a job offer with a high salary. Applicants would need at least 30 points to be eligible for a visa under the proposal, and the fastest way to get there is to have a Nobel Prize or comparable international award.
The vast majority of Americans, if roles were reversed, would not be getting into this country under that system.
It's actually going to benefit more people that have been here, that are waiting, and that actually deserve the green card.
I think it's okay for us to put in some guidelines and some criteria that they have to meet. Even if that bar is really high, let's get the best of the best coming into our country and contributing to our society.
If enacted, the plan would reduce legal immigration to around 500,000 people a year within a decade. And both sides disagree on whether getting the plan through Congress will be difficult.
I think it needs to get passed because really when you look at immigration, it is our country's only opportunity to select our citizens.
I am very doubtful that this act would pass. I think that any immigration reform act is going to be a very, very hard sell.
I'd venture to guess that no, it will not pass in Congress, but if anything, the last year has taught me a bit of humility, so who knows?
It remains to be seen if this proposal will move forward, as Republicans hold 52 of the Senate's 100 seats, and the bill would need 60 votes to pass. Jacqueline Matter, ABC 7, your Suncoast News.
Welcome back. Florida Senator Marco Rubio and Texas Senator Ted Cruz will have an interesting dilemma if President Trump's immigration plan ever comes to a vote. Will they vote for a bill that would have excluded their parents from entering the U.S.? Ted Cruz's website talks about how his parents came to America from Cuba, quote, penniless and not speaking a word of English. Well, under the Trump plan, no English, no entry in the U.S. The proposal prioritizes those who not only speak English, but also have advanced skills and education. And joining us for more is Johannes Werner, the owner of the Cuba Standard, former State Representative Keith Fitzgerald, a political science professor at New College, and Christian Ziegler, Republican State Committeeman for Sarasota. And Johannes, I'll start with you because you are an immigrant yourself from Germany. You're married to a woman, I believe, from Mexico?
She's Mexican-American. She's got both citizenships, and I came here with a fiancé visa.
Okay, so when the president announced this proposal several weeks ago, what was your immediate impression?
Well, my immediate reaction is it's another politician stomping on the weakest in society, trying to make political hay out of people who are already facing difficult times and who are actually net economic contributors.
Christian, I already see that you're shaking your head, but let me ask you the question that we raised off the top of this. if this became law, Marco Rubio would not be in the United States Senate and Ted Cruz wouldn't even be in the country.
Okay, and when you let off, you talked about how their parents and what their status was coming to the country or not. I'll tell you, my grandmother, she came from former Yugoslavia. My father still lives over in Serbia. So I'm well aware of what the immigration, rules were back then. I'll tell you, I mean, different times call for different rules. We've gradually increased the amount of immigration every year, legal immigration we're talking about, from 200,000 to 500,000. Now we're at a little over 1 million each year. Our country at this point, I mean, we need to be able to pay for ourselves. Our debt's through the roof. We have record national debt. And it's time to really crack down and put down rules that bring the best and the brightest into our country. I mean, it's not our job in the U.S. to really take care of the world and pay the bills and give everyone in the world an opportunity. It's our job to look after our citizens, and legal immigration is our only opportunity to hand select who is allowed into our country.
And you say that even though if this law was in effect, you wouldn't be here.
I do say that because, look, there's different generations, Alan. I mean, we look back, and when our grandparents came here, came through Ellis Island and through the legal process, at least my ancestors did. When they came through here, we had a different country at the time. Our debt was not where it was. Our welfare state wasn't established like it is now. And we just can't open the doors, and you have to have some criteria. And to be honest, now looking at this criteria, it makes a lot of sense to go to a merit versus some lottery or some family criteria. So I think it's a great plan.
Keith, over time, there has been an ebb and flow in the number of immigrants that the U.S. has allowed into the country. Is it, as Christian would suggest, time to basically raise the bar or close the door a little bit so we can take care of ourselves?
I got to say, I find the whole conversation a little bit silly because it doesn't attend to the details of the bill in any realistic way. We've let in roughly around 1 million people for quite some time. The people that this bill will affect are the people who come in who are very close relatives of immigrants who have come already. So you're talking about the adult children of an American citizen, the grandparents or the parents of an American citizen. So first of all, it's not a crackdown on anything. These are legal people. Second, it's not going to have a gigantic impact on any kind of labor market because under this law, you cannot qualify for these categories unless you have a sponsor who will say, we will take care of this person so they'll never be on public assistance.
All right, so the question is, if it's not going to have real impact on the bottom line, what is at play here? And we are just getting warmed up with our conversation. We'll have much more right after we check First Alert Weather, so stay with us. It is going to be a busy month in Congress. A vote on the debt ceiling. The government has to be funded. Texas is going to need a massive hurricane relief dollars, and President Trump wants to cut legal immigration to the U.S. And joining us for more is Johannes Werner, the owner of the Cuba Standard, former State Representative Keith Fitzgerald, a political science professor at New College, and Christian Ziegler, Republican State Committee man for Sarasota. And Johannes, I want to give you an opportunity to respond to Christian and ask, what is wrong at this point in terms of these are different times and different ages than our grandparents and even you when you came into the country came here. What is wrong with trying to increase the level in terms of education and economic ability of today's immigrants?
I'm actually glad that someone brings up this issue. This is something that needs to be fixed. The United States does not put enough emphasis in getting high-skilled people into the United States. There's practically a lottery for high-skilled people, and that's not good. So I'm glad that someone is bringing up that issue. But if you do a win-lose situation, that's not good. You're going to affect families, you're going to separate families, and as Keith said, I don't think it's going to work. People are going to come anyways.
Can I say something about that? Because I think one of the things that, we can try to make this into a black, white, liberal, conservative, whatever kind of thing. I don't think that's true at all. I think a lot of people across the spectrum think that we should have more emphasis on high skills, and we should have a higher emphasis on developing the economy in certain areas. I think one of the things about this policy is that it's sort of foolish to undercut the ability of people to bring their children into the United States if you're trying to attract them to come here to get a job. So it's not so much that in principle I think it's an awful idea. I think it just oversteers.
Christian, let me give you a chance.
Yeah, so, you know, I do agree with you with the high skilled, and we need to focus on really fixing that. But the question is, I mean, you're talking about the give or take. You have to. You know, where do we set the limit? I mean, how do we set this limit? Do you support just opening the doors and allowing 7 billion people in this world to flood into the United States? I mean, we are the most desired country in the entire world. Everyone wants to come here, and it's okay for us to pick and choose who's allowed in.
Christian, there are 675,000 people a year who are close family members who are allowed in now. We're not throwing open the doors to 7 billion people.
But
that's just ridiculous.
But Keith, I mean, when you look at this, it's not just, I mean, it's easy to say, oh, their child or their brother and sister, but when you look at chain migration, it goes deeper than that. Cousins, you know, they just keep going down the line, and we can't just allow.
Who is they?
The government. The government has a strict criteria. When you go down it,
We've
you
had
get
the
certain
same
points.
criteria since 1965. They haven't changed.
Which is
since
when they went to chain migration, and that's what Donald Trump's putting into. Absolutely.
Christian,
and when you look at this,
honestly,
Keith,
look.
hold on, let me finish. Let me finish. So when you look at this, they have a criteria based on brothers and sisters get certain points.
Yeah.
You start going down that, which is fine, and some people agree with that, right? With that system, which is fine. But what Donald Trump is doing is he's changing from a chain migration system, a focus on that, a focus on a diversity lottery, which makes no sense that we're just pulling names out of a hat.
Christian.
And he's going to high-skilled, highly educated individuals that can come here and stand on their own.
I wrote my doctoral dissertation on immigration policy precisely because it was not a simple black-white issue. It didn't cut across ideological, partisan grounds all the way back to the 19th century. You're using the term chain migration in a completely nonsensical form. That is a specific word which has a specific meaning. And honestly, Christian, you don't know what it means.
You're absolutely incorrect. I appreciate the liberal
you just
professor.
don't know what the word means.
That's not true.
Let me get a question in here. I'm looking at a list here, Christian. John McCain, Marco Rubio, Jeff Flake, Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, Ted Cruz. It's hard to believe that any or any number of them would be voting for legislation like this. If it's so unlikely that this proposal could actually become law, what's the intention? I mean, it's been speculated about that the intention here was to appeal to the base, because the president, in terms of his approval numbers right now, is not doing that well, and you got to keep that base loyal to him.
There are a lot of people, when you look at middle America, that are concerned with immigration. Their jobs are being taken, they're concerned with that. You have high-skilled people that should be allowed in, they're having trouble. And really, to go back to Keith, I mean, Keith, it's fine that you sit at your university and you're doing these studies and you're doing these papers. I will tell you, my family, my brother, my half-brother lives in Serbia. He's in med school. He would like to come over to this country. And I don't believe that it's fair that we put people forward because of a lottery, or just because, you know, we allow people that are in this diversity lottery, which is like crazy, or someone's cousin to come in before him, who would come here, go to med school, be a doctor, and be a contributing member of society.
You're yelling,
so,
Christian. Listen,
no, I'm just making
first
my
of all,
point, Keith.
Diversity, 75,000 people a year. I'm happy if you want to do away with it. Second, we already agree that we should be letting more doctors and engineers, so there's not even a disagreement. I think that Alan is making a point that if you really know what this bill does, it doesn't do much. And my position and Ioannis's position are closer to Marco Rubio's position. So, you know, why would you bring this thing up? And I think it's to excite nativist tendencies, and that's a shame. We should be trying to unite people, not divide them. We should be looking at
Keith,
problems
we have
like,
to look out for our own country. It's time to do that.
We are looking out for
No, we
our
aren't
own
looking
country.
out for our own country.
You know,
We're
would
talking
you
about
stop
just allowing
yelling at
everyone
me?
in. Okay. We are not
Stop
looking out for our own country.
yelling at me. You're a very rude young man, and you
listen to
All right,
you
gentlemen.
dishonor your parents. by your rude
Gentlemen,
behavior.
all right, let's pause on it. Johannes, I want to ask you this question, because I remember a couple of years ago, there were a lot of people in the Hispanic community who became ambivalent in terms of the electoral process, because they were disappointed that Barack Obama did not do all the things that he promised to do. And they took a pass at the midterms, they took a pass at the presidential election. And here, you know, voting matters. What would you say to that community in terms of where we are now, and what the lesson is here.
To tell you the truth, it's hard to motivate people, Hispanics, to go vote because to them Obama was the deporter in chief. That's one of the reasons for staying away from elections. What I can tell them is that it can get much worse than it already is. Essentially, if we prohibit family reunion, or if we restrict it severely, there's going to be more underground migration. More underground migration means less rights. It means more exposure to the whatever could happen tomorrow. And it means just less contribution to this economy. So if they vote, they could steer this country back to a sane immigration policy, and they could give an answer to people who always assume that we immigrants, are just freeloaders who are not contributing to this economy.
Do you
Quite
see
the contrary.
any energy in that community or other communities concerned about these issues in terms of whether we're talking about the midterms or what's going to happen in 4 years? Because there was not a lot of energy there last time.
It depends on the candidates. At this point, I don't see a lot of energy. Yes.
Christian, let me ask you about Johannes's point that if you're talking about separating families, that his point is that you may open up more of what has been coming down in terms of illegal immigration. You could say that the president's rhetoric over the last 7 months has slowed border crossings. The fact is that the border crossings were slowing before that. But if this became law, wouldn't you have a lot of impetus for family members who don't get in to come in illegally?
Well, and I don't think that we should be basing our laws based on how criminals will respond to them, first of all. Second, I actually believe that when you address legal immigration, we also need to address illegal immigration, and that goes to shutting down that border and preventing that, that effect from happening.
Keith, let me give you the last word.
I don't disagree, but we need to do it.
I think that what we really need to do is try to take a sane approach to this thing. Everybody knows immigration policy is broken, including the unsanctioned immigration. That's not a good situation. We really need to address this. This particular measure, it doesn't really make any sense. It doesn't really address any particular issue. It doesn't solve anything. And I'm with Marco and John McCain on this one. I think that we need comprehensive, sensible policy that unites people and doesn't divide people.
All right, let's take a quick break and we'll have final thoughts when we return. Welcome back. President Trump plans to cut immigration in half by 2027. Our guests join us right now for final thoughts. So, Johannes, you take a look at this bill, and obviously you see there is merit to raising the bar in terms of people who are accomplished coming into this country. Any predictions in terms of whether you think that this bill is going to go anywhere?
I'm not the political expert in terms of U.S. policy, but I don't think that big business interests will let this pass.
Keith, you are the political expert on this panel, and you do say some merit in terms of raising the bar in terms of the immigrants who are coming into the country, but do you think that the president's motivation was immigration policy or domestic politics?
Well, I don't think this bill's ever going to come to the floor for the reason Johannes just said. The chamber hates it. I think it is a political move, and I think it gives you an indication of what's broken with our politics. We should be less divisive and more constructive. This is a policy that we all know is broken. We can't make any progress in it as long as people are just playing political games with it, and I think that's what the president is doing here.
Christian, I know how you feel about this, but would you acknowledge that there was any politics in play here?
Well, I think that you can say, are politics in play, or is he just delivering based on what he campaigned on and what the American people elected him on?
I don't remember him campaigning on cutting legal immigration.
You're saying cutting legal immigration, that's how you're phrasing it, but what he's actually doing is he's putting criteria in going forward for legal immigration. So he did actually campaign on a merit-based system, which is exactly what this does. Now, the limits, obviously those change. Those go up and down based on the years, and that's traditionally and historically been done.
All right, we have to leave it there, but before we go, last...